So today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating source that lays out a whole framework for psychological control. It calls this framework the game. Now, we're not talking about traditional warfare here. This is all about ideological weapons, tools designed specifically for the human mind. Let's get right into it.
And right off the bat, the source hits us with this powerful quote. The whole idea here is that the really effective conflicts today aren't fought with physical weapons. Nope, they're fought with psychological operations, or psyops, that target the very way we think, the way we talk, and how we deal with each other.
But to really get a handle on these weapons, we first have to understand the battlefield. The source actually creates its own vocabulary to describe the players, the rules, and the environment of this thing it calls the game.
So who's in charge? Well, according to this text, at the very top, you've got a group it calls the OK Club. These are the ones presented as the orchestrators, the ringmasters, if you will. They aren't just playing the game, they're the ones who are supposedly designing and controlling it from way behind the scenes.
Okay, so what exactly are they controlling? This source defines the game as the entire global system of control. And the world where this control is actually put into practice, it calls that the zoo, a kind of manufactured reality built for the general population.
And that brings us to the final key term, pawns. As you can probably guess, the source says this is all of us, the general public. We're the people living inside the zoo. And crucially, we are allegedly unaware that our beliefs and even our actions are being guided by the architects of the game.
All right, so now that we've got the lingo down, let's start looking at the arsenal. The very first weapon detailed in the source is what it calls a spell of silence, and it directly equates this with political correctness.
Now, according to the source, this has nothing to do with being polite. It's described as a deliberately confusing set of language rules. And what's the alleged purpose? To make people so afraid of saying the wrong thing that they just decide not to speak at all, to make them self-censor.
And here's where the strategy really clicks into place. The goal, as the text presents it, isn't some top-down law telling you what you can't say. It's much more subtle. It's about self-censorship, driven by social pressure. The method? Create vague rules that are always changing. This supposedly creates so much confusion that the pawns start policing each other's speech, doing the work for the ringmasters.
Okay, moving on to the second weapon in the arsenal, and this is where we see how the whole system allegedly builds on itself. The source calls this one a war on union, gives it the label wokeism, and presents it as a tool meant to break society apart.
The main idea here, according to this text, is just pure division. Think about it. If the first weapon is all about creating silence, this one is about creating noise, but it's the noise of conflict. The argument is that if people are unified, they're a threat. So this ideology is allegedly designed to shatter society into tons of little groups, all at war with each other.
This slide shows us a core tactic that the source calls the inversion of the sexes. It suggests that two new archetypes are created. On one side, you've got the alpha female, described as this hybrid that promotes conflict instead of harmony. And on the other side, the beta male, described as a purposefully weakened version of the masculine, engineered to be compliant. So what's the end game here? It's all about preventing unity. The framework suggests that if you can get men and women to see each other as enemies, you can guarantee that the population stays divided, and a divided population is a whole lot easier to manage. The method is to basically elevate conflict to be more important than cooperation.
But hang on, what if someone actually sees through these first two weapons? What happens then? Well, that's where the third and final weapon comes in. The source calls it a defensive spell, and it uses the label conspiracy theory.
This is presented as the ultimate shutdown tool. And that phrase, thought-terminating cipher, is really specific. It basically means a word or a phrase that's designed to make you stop thinking critically, right in your tracks. The source claims the label conspiracy theory is used in exactly this way.
So here's how it allegedly works in 3 simple steps. First, a watcher, that's someone who sees a piece of the game, speaks up. Step 2, the conspiracy label gets slapped on them. And third, that label acts as a signal to all the pawns to just mock the speaker and completely dismiss the information, which effectively kills any threat to the official story. So let's pull back and bring it all together. The source doesn't just present these as 3 separate tools, not at all. It describes them as a fully integrated system, a psychological arsenal where every single weapon supports the others.
And this slide really puts the whole framework in one place.
First, you divide the population. Then, you silence them using these complex and scary social rules. And finally, if anyone manages to break through all that noise and silence, you have a failsafe, a powerful label to discredit them instantly. It's a three-layered system of control.
And that pretty much brings us to the end of our breakdown. The source material paints a really stark picture of a world shaped by psychological manipulation. And it leaves us with one central, pretty provocative question. Within a framework like this, what does it really mean to be a player versus just another pawn?